Okay, welcome to Old Dog New Tricks. It's another crazy warm November day. It's November 10th, but I'm out here in a t-shirt and the sun's going down, but it's beautiful. So I'm trying to get some skateboarding in, and today I brought duct tape so I can work on those Caspers and not destroy my shoes, and I want to preserve my webbing. But more than that, I want to keep the shoelaces from breaking because I didn't bring any extra shoelaces. So if I lose a shoelace, that's the end of the skateboard session.
The reason I call these toe-side monster walks is because you're turning in the direction of your toe. And it's different than an end-over, where you turn in the direction of your toe and then your heel, or vice versa. With a toe-side monster walk, you're basically walking the board forward and keeping your momentum going. A heel-side monster walk is when you're turning in the direction of your heel, and so it's like walking backwards. And I find those much more difficult to do than the toe-side monster walks. Spacewalks are one of my very favorite freestyle tricks. And the thing about this trick is it's not considered bad form for your tail to scrape the ground from time to time while you're doing it. And that's one of the reasons there's a skid plate on the front and the back of a freestyle deck, so that when your tail does scrape the ground, it doesn't grab it, but it slides across. The one-footed pivot is a classic freestyle move. It involves pivoting 180 degrees on your board while lifting your back foot off. And basically you have to throw your back foot in front of yourself and anticipate where the board is going to end up, so that when you do the 180 degree turn, your feet are in the proper position to meet up with the board again. You can do this trick while lifting your back wheels off the ground, but I've been keeping my back wheels on the ground intentionally to provide a bit of resistance because I'm trying to work up to doing a different trick. The flamingo is kind of like a one-footed G-turn, and of course I'm not really doing it yet, I'm practicing, but it's a one-footed G-turn where you keep all four wheels on the ground, and so you slide your back wheels across the ground, and you use the resistance of the ground and the lean of your body to carve a 360 degree arc. I don't know the origins of this trick, but it's one that Andy Anderson has made popular recently. I'm not sure if he invented it, but you should watch him do it because he's the master.
It's going to take more work, of course, but it's fun. It's a fun trick. It's fun to feel the wheels catching on the ground, and you're basically doing like a power slide with your back two wheels, but the power slide is steered by your front foot alone and your body weight. Can we just take a minute to appreciate the sound of the leaves raking across the flat pad with this November wind? The wind is kind of like an ocean tide. It's blowing from the west, but then a counter tide will come and blow a little bit from the east, and it'll create these little eddies and whirls of leaves which work their way across the flat pad and kick up the leaves into little whirlpools. I feel like I'm at the bottom of an ocean floor, which is exactly where we are, because the Niagara Escarpment, which is right over here, is now devoid of leaves. The Niagara Escarpment at the top marks the shores of an ancient giant lake. And so we are at what would have been the bottom of the lake. And when the wind blows the leaves, it's perhaps remembering the tides that used to course overhead. So there you go. Back to skateboarding. A few things I've noticed about these Caspers now that I get back into them with the duct tape on my shoe is that, well, first of all, I do it off the nose, so my back foot is on the nose because I find it's easier to catch that way. But when you're setting up for a Casper, your back foot is right at the back of whatever end of the board you're using, with your toe kind of dangling off the front, and your front foot has the heel dangling off. So basically it's a toe heel situation. And what I used to do is I used to keep my foot way up here, but it's harder to scoop it. So I find keeping the front foot further back, as if you're doing like maybe an ollie or a kick flip, it makes it easier to keep your heel from hitting the ground. So that's one trick that I just figured out after all these years of doing Caspers. I never really stopped to think about it until I started making these videos. So thank you, viewers, because without you I wouldn't be doing the videos. Well, I'd have less incentive to do the videos. And that is helping me think about my skateboarding. And thinking about skateboarding is the key to continuing to do it into my 50s. So that I do it intelligently instead of just throwing myself into the trick and hoping that my body figures it out and never really figuring out what my body figures out. Hard work, people out there in YouTube land. But what I just did was incorporate the Dundas Stomp, which I named last episode, into a little footwork routine that involved walking the dog and I think a G-turn. It's a start. The trick to doing freestyle is to build combinations of moves. You can learn one trick and be like, oh, I can do the Dundas Stomp. But if you can't work it into your routine, it's not really good for anything. It's just a sideshow. So that's the freestyler's discipline. And I'm not great at it, but it's, again, something to work on. When you try to do the Dundas Stomp with the tail of your board instead of the nose, you can get a different kind of flip, which is more of a straight-on pressure kick flip, I guess you'd call that. It's actually basically, as the sun goes down, I'm just chasing the sun around the park, trying to get some good shadows. But that last Casper, it wasn't quite a 360 Casper, but it was maybe a 180 or a 540, somewhere in between 180 and 540 Casper. And I think the only real way to do a 360 Casper is to ride into it. I've been trying to learn how to do them by starting in a stationary position with the board already in Casper position, just to get the feel of it. But if you don't ride into it, you don't have the momentum to carry you that 360 degrees. Ride into it, and basically you're riding into it backwards or fakie. That's because I use my back foot as the anchor foot. If you anchored with your front foot, you could just ride into it going your normal direction. But either way, you have to ride into it, get into the Casper position, and then swing it around 360 degrees. And that last one was pretty smooth, even though I don't think it was a full 360 degree rotation.
I've been avoiding doing ollies for a while because part of the fun of freestyle is doing all these other tricks that actually predate the invention of the ollie. But now that I'm getting a little more comfortable on my board, there's some tricks that I want to do that require doing an ollie. So you start with the basics. And it feels good. I do them off the nose because you get a little more pop. This is a trick that predates the ollie and the kickflip, where you spin your board like a kickflip, but you do it by hooking your foot under the board. And the trick that I hadn't quite figured out while I was doing this is you have to move your hips to the spot where you want to be when you land the trick. So there it is. I moved my hip over and the board followed. But if you keep your hips straight, the board isn't going to flip properly, and you're not going to be in the right spot to land on it. I think I'll get this eventually.
Okay, I'm getting a little tired, and my knee is starting to ache a little bit. And that last trick is another trick that I used to be able to do that I cannot do anymore, and it's what's called an old school kickflip. Instead of doing an ollie kickflip, you kind of hook your foot under the edge of the side of your board and flip it that way. It's a standard freestyle move that predates the ollie kickflip, and I used to be able to do it, and I have forgotten how. But I'm not trying to break any records here, just trying to have a good time, trying to stay limber. So until next time, thanks for watching Old Dog New Tricks. Keep it low to the ground, and I will see you on the flip side. It's just a gorgeous day again. And the tree that I was so admiring of last time has lost most of its leaves because we had some mighty windstorms. Took down all the leaves off the trees on the escarpment. But the leaves here at the park are a little bit shielded because it's in a depression, so some of them are still here.